There are so many different ways that you can play Hearthstone in various different decks. You can be aggressive, you can play a bunch of combos, or if you're like me, what you want to do is just keep your opponent from having any fun at all to begin with. If you align with me in this quest to make sure your opponent doesn't do anything fun, well, Frost Death Knight could be exactly what you're looking for. My name is Ethan for the Gamer, and today we're going to talk about all things Frost Death Knight in Hearthstone. Frost Death Knight is a very powerful deck. It's somewhat of a hybrid control deck that can do a lot of damage as well. In this guide, we're going to cover a triple Frost Rune deck that makes use of some of the key new cards available, including Frostworm's Fury and Overseer of Frigidara. This is a 40-card Runethal deck, which is designed to wear down your opponent over a prolonged game with heavy board control and chip damage. It's an extremely versatile deck, which is one of its biggest strengths. So this is the deck itself. I'll go over some key cards and talk about why they're so good and how to play them. First, we have Horn of Winter, which has become a staple card in Frost Death Knights. This refreshes 2 mana crystals to allow you to pull off some crazy combos, and since a lot of our stuff is expensive, it lets us make better use of our mana. It also can allow us to finish the game earlier, since a lot of our damage comes from our spells. We can cast multiple spells in a turn, and our opponent won't be expecting it. Next, we have Bonebreaker. It's more chip damage. Anytime you attack a minion, you'll also deal damage to the enemy, so we're both controlling the board and damaging the enemy hero. Icy Touch is just a great control card. Deal 2 damage to an enemy and freeze it. Very good for our deck. Astalar is just a great legendary that's used in this deck, mostly for its final form, Astalar the Flamebringer, and it can deal up to 16 damage directly to the opponent if it's played correctly. Also gives us some armor early on, which is good to help us stay alive in the game. Death Chiller is one of those cards that's either fantastic or just mediocre. It provides good control early on, but it's a flex spot and you could change this with something else if you wanted to. Some alternatives might be Invincible, which is the Death Knight legendary, or even just Venomous Scorpid. It's a great card that can provide some more spells as well, and removal. But either way, Death Chiller's in the list that I've been playing, and it still can do some great stuff early on. Defrost, just excellent card draw. Frost Strike is an incredibly powerful card. It's removal, and it gets us cards. And since we're discovering Frost Rune cards, some of the stuff you get is very, very powerful. Harbinger of Winter, just a great card, helps us get some frost spells in hand, especially before we play Lady Death Whisper. Chill Fallen Baron, just more good card draw. Glacial Advance, excellent card. It can provide some good damage, board control, and let us do some big damage combos with its mana reduction effect. Howling Blast, just another great control card. You can either kill a minion with it, or you can hit your opponent right in the face. We have 1 copy of the Nerubian Vizier here. It can be a great card if you line it up properly, as it helps you discover powerful spells. Again, we're playing Prince Runethal, just a key piece of the deck, lets us have some more health, and lets us play more cards. Rhyme Sword, excellent value here. It's removal, but it's also going to reduce the cost of our spells. Since we're playing tons of spells and we have some expensive ones, it lets us have those other powerful combo turns that we were talking about. Guild Trader is excellent in this deck. Since we have so many powerful spells, getting the spell damage is important, and also if we draw it early on and don't want it, you can just trade it back into your deck. Super good. Lady Death Whisper is an essential part of the endgame damage combo. You can stack a whole bunch of Frostworms with this, and it's just super, super powerful, and one of the main reasons we're playing triple Frost as well. The Might of Minithil is just a strong weapon, super decent control option. It lets you freeze all the enemy minions, which is great, and it's just a lot of damage. Since we're getting in so much chip damage early on, this sometimes just lets you finish off the game and win. Remorseless Winter is probably one of the best cards in this deck. It essentially acts as a board wipe that also draws us a card. Super powerful. The Saurian is just a great tempo play, does a lot of good stuff for the deck. Rhyme Sculptor is another great tempo play. The excess damage is likely to hit the opponent directly since we're killing so much of their board off. Marrow Manipulator is a great card as well. It has great late game potential for damage with this card. If there's no enemy minions for it to kill, a lot of times all of that extra damage is just going to their hero's face. And Overseer Frigidara, super powerful. It's a board wipe that also draws cards, exactly what we want in this deck. And Frostworm's Fury is the last card in this deck. It's an essential card, and honestly the entire deck pivots around the damage and control you get from Frostworm's Fury. It provides so much value, so much tempo, and it's just a very powerful card. So let's talk about some tips and how the deck plays out. Again, it's a very versatile deck, and it can play either as a heavy control deck or a strong tempo damage deck, since we have so many ways to hit the opponent's face directly. A main combo of the deck is to stack as many Frostworm's Furies as you can using the copy effects of Lady Death Whisper. You can get up to 4 Frostworms this way, which is 20 damage on its own, and 4 turns of your opponent being unable to attack. Of course, that's not going to happen in every game, especially since we are playing a 40 card deck. We're not always guaranteed to draw all the cards that we need early on, but thankfully this deck also provides fantastic control through its various frost spells like Frost Strike and Remorseless Winter. This gives you time to stall out against opponents who are playing the long game, like Quest Priest or Blood Death Knight. Something to keep in mind is face damage, which is when you hit your opponent directly, is very important in this deck. That extra 1, 2, 3 damage from a spell or a weapon attack can make all of the difference. Often you'll want to deal damage directly to the enemy hero rather than their minions, as your freezes keep them under control. So as far as mulligans, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Ideally, you're looking for as much card draw early on as possible, and your mulligan choices of course impact that. You generally always want to keep Defrost, Frost Strike, and Harbinger of Winter, as they provide the early card draw that you really want in this deck. If your opening hand has Frostworm's Fury and Lady Death Whisper, it's reasonable to keep those as well, especially depending on the matchup. If you think your opponent's going to be a slower deck, it's completely reasonable to keep these cards in your opening hand. If you are facing something that you expect to be more aggressive, a lot of times it's right to throw these back though. You'll draw them eventually. Against someone who's playing an aggressive deck, you're likely to win just by killing all their threats, and you don't necessarily need to pull this combo off to win. Generally, you never want to keep the Marrow Manipulator, Might of Menethil, or Overseer Frigidara. While they're powerful cards, we want to draw those later in the game, and we want to make sure that we have our tempo plays and our card draw early on. I'll give you a few tips on specific matchups here, and first let's talk about Quest Priest. In this matchup, you need to go fast against Quest Priest. Full face damage all the time. Otherwise, you're gonna run out of steam against the swarms of powerful minions and spells. Against Quest Priest, we're not the control deck. This is where we want to be the aggressor. Now against Blood Death Knight, this can get a little interesting, as Blood Death Knight decks are still kind of being refined, but at the moment, this Frost Death Knight deck fares pretty well against the Nathrius-centric decks. Just deal lots of damage before they can get to their endgame, freeze their big minions, save your powerful spells to clear their taunts. Lifesteal is a big problem for us, so you want to make sure that you freeze any lifesteal threats that you can. If you come against Ram Druid, this Frost deck fares pretty well against the spiraling damage of the Ram Druid deck. A lot of times against Druid, we also want to be the aggressor, deal as much face damage as you can early on, and usually you can finish the game before it even starts going. Since we have so much card draw, you can generally get all the damage in that you need. If you're coming against aggro and tempo decks, this is where the Frost deck really shines. You'll be able to pick up a lot of corpses as your minions die, you get to control the board with your various frost spells, and you close out the game with big damage before you get swarmed. Generally, just being able to remove all their threats ensures that you'll win the long game. And really, there you have it. That should be everything you need to know about Frost Death Knight to get out there and start winning games. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Make sure you check out thegamer.com for all things gaming, and we'll see you in the next one.